December 7, 1941, 7:02 a.m., Opana Radar Station, northern Oahu. Private Joseph Lockard stared at his oscilloscope screen in disbelief. The green glow showed something impossible, a massive formation of aircraft, 136 miles out and closing fast on Pearl Harbor. Here's the twist everyone gets wrong about that famous radar detection. It wasn't dismissed because the technology failed. It was dismissed because nobody believed American radar could actually work that well. Stay for the shocking moment when Japanese naval officers realized they weren't fighting soldiers. They were fighting factories. What Lockard didn't know was that his SCR-270 radar had just accomplished something the Japanese High Command considered technologically impossible. The mathematics of long-range detection were already written in the electromagnetic waves bouncing off 183 Japanese aircraft. But wait till you see what happened when those same Japanese officers experienced American radar superiority firsthand. The SCR-270 represented a quantum leap in military technology, a 55-foot antenna tower capable of detecting aircraft at 150 miles, powered by a 76-horsepower engine driving a 31-kilowatt generator, operating at the then revolutionary frequency of 106 megacycles. While Japanese forces relied on visual spotting and radio intercepts, Americans had created an electronic eye that could see through darkness, weather, and the curvature of the Earth. Here's what's insane about this. Among the thousands of Japanese sailors steaming toward their destiny that morning were men who had become legends of naval warfare, and men who had witnessed the technological revolution that doomed their empire. But on December 7th, 1941, they were confident, supremely trained warriors who believed American industrial technology was soft, inferior, and tactically useless against Japanese fighting spirit. This story reveals how electromagnetic waves defeated Bushido, and how Japan's supreme confidence turned to technological terror when they discovered what American radar could really do. But wait till you see what happened next. The moment Private Lockard's call reached the information center at Fort Shafter, something extraordinary happened that would echo through military history. Lieutenant Kermit Tyler, the duty officer who dismissed the radar contact as probably a flight of B-17s from California, made a decision that revealed the most shocking truth about December 7th. Here's the crazy part nobody talks about. The radar worked perfectly. The SCR-270 had detected the largest air armada in Pacific history from a distance that Japanese military planners considered impossible for any detection system. But Tyler's dismissal wasn't incompetence. It was disbelief that American technology could perform such technological wizardry. Japanese Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, commanding the Pearl Harbor Strike Force, had based his entire attack plan on the assumption that American radar was primitive, unreliable, and limited to perhaps 20-30 miles detection range. According to captured Japanese planning documents, their intelligence estimated American radar capability at barely functional for coastal defense. They were wrong by more than 100 miles. The SCR-270's massive rotating antenna array, with its 36 half-wave dipoles arranged in 3 bays, was tracking Nagumo's aircraft with precision that would have terrified Japanese planners. But this was just the beginning. Commander Minoru Genda, architect of the Pearl Harbor air attack, represented everything the Japanese military prized: tactical brilliance, innovative thinking, and absolute confidence in Japanese technological superiority. The 37-year-old naval aviator had spent months perfecting every detail of the attack, studying American defenses, calculating approach routes, and timing the strike for maximum surprise. But Genda had a fatal blind spot. In his personal diary, recovered after the war, Genda wrote about American radar. Their detection equipment is crude, short-ranged, and operated by poorly trained personnel. Our approach will exploit these technological weaknesses. He based this assessment on Japanese intelligence reports that systematically underestimated American electronics capability. Genda came from a family of engineers in Hiroshima. His father had worked on early Japanese radio equipment, and Genda himself understood electronics better than most naval officers. This technical background made his dismissal of American radar even more significant, and more wrong. What happened next broke their calculations. The Japanese had developed their own radar systems, but they were primitive compared to American technology. Japanese radar operated at longer wavelengths, had shorter range, and required much larger antenna arrays for equivalent performance. When Japanese engineers examined captured American radar equipment later in the war, their reports expressed genuine shock at the sophistication. One Japanese technical report translated after the war stated, "American radar technology exceeds our estimates by factors we did not consider possible. Their manufacturing precision and electronic innovation represent industrial capabilities we cannot match." While Japanese planners dismissed American radar as technological propaganda, the reality was staggering. The SCR-270 that detected their Pearl Harbor attack was just one of dozens rolling off American production lines with precision that Japanese industry couldn't match. Here are the specifications that would have terrified Japanese planners. The SCR-270 operated at 106 megacycles, a frequency so high that Japanese engineers considered it impractical for military use. Its 15-kilowatt transmitter, powered by dual water-cooled triodes, could punch electromagnetic signals through atmospheric interference that would blind Japanese radar systems. But the real shock was American production capability. American radar production versus Japanese estimates. Japanese intelligence estimated 1215 radar sets total. American actual production by 1942, over 3,000 radar systems. Japanese radar range, 1525 miles. American SCR-270 range, 150 plus miles. Japanese production rate, 2 to 3 sets per month. American production rate, 200 plus sets per month. The twist that changed everything. The most devastating surprise wasn't just the radar's capability. It was how quickly Americans could manufacture and deploy these systems. Japanese war planners had calculated that even if American radar worked, they couldn't produce enough units to matter strategically. They were watching American factories treat advanced electronics like automobiles on an assembly line. One Westinghouse engineer later recalled, "We were building radar sets faster than the Navy could train operators. The Japanese were fighting individual battles while we were fighting industrial warfare." This wasn't just engineering, it was industrial warfare. By mid-1942, the mathematical reality of American industrial capacity was becoming clear to Japanese commanders, and the numbers were psychologically devastating. American radar production, 500 units per month. Japanese total radar inventory, 47 operational sets. American electronics workers, 2.3 million. Japanese electronics production workforce, 67,000. American radar range advantage, 400% superior. Japanese response time to this revelation, complete strategic panic. Here's what they never saw coming. But statistics don't capture the human reality. Petty Officer Takeshi Yamamoto, a radar operator aboard the cruiser Otago, wrote to his wife in February 1942, "The Americans seem to see our ships even in storms and darkness. Their weapons find us when we cannot find them. I fear we are fighting ghosts made of electricity." Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, began receiving field reports that shattered his strategic assumptions. American ships were engaging Japanese forces at night with devastating accuracy. American aircraft were intercepting Japanese formations with impossible precision. American submarines were avoiding Japanese patrols as if they knew exactly where every Japanese ship was located. The numbers were staggering, but the human cost was even more shocking. By late 1942, Japanese naval officers were confronting a technological gap that couldn't be closed through courage, training, or tactical brilliance. The Americans weren't just building better radar, they were building an entire electronic warfare ecosystem that Japan couldn't match. Captain Tamichi Hara of the Japanese destroyer Shigura experienced this technological superiority firsthand during the night battles around Guadalcanal. In his post-war memoir, Hara described the psychological impact. "We would approach under cover of darkness, confident in our night fighting skills, only to discover that American guns were already trained on us before we could even see their ships. But wait, it gets worse. The Japanese discovered that American radar wasn't just detecting their ships, it was guiding American artillery with pinpoint accuracy. The integration of radar with fire control systems created a technological advantage that transformed naval warfare fundamentally. Japanese ships operating around Guadalcanal found themselves under accurate gunfire from American positions they couldn't see, guided by radar they couldn't detect, from ranges they couldn't match." Hara wrote, "It was like fighting an enemy who could see in complete darkness while we remained blind. The strategic implications were becoming terrifyingly clear. Japan was fighting a war against an enemy whose technological capabilities exceeded their most pessimistic estimates. American industrial capacity wasn't just producing more equipment, it was producing better equipment faster than Japanese engineers could understand it. The moment of complete realization came during the night of November 14th to 15, 1942, in the waters off Guadalcanal, when Japanese Admiral Hiroaki Abe encountered something that shattered his understanding of naval warfare forever. Abe commanded a powerful force, the battleships Hiei and Kirishima, supported by cruisers and destroyers, approaching Henderson Field under cover of darkness for what should have been a routine bombardment mission. Japanese night fighting tactics were legendary, their optics were superior, their crews were trained for night combat, and they had dominated every previous night engagement. What happened next broke their calculations. At 1:24 a.m., American radar detected the Japanese fleet at over 27,000 yards, more than 13 miles away. Admiral Daniel Callahan's American force, centered around the cruisers Atlanta and San Francisco, began maneuvering for attack while the Japanese were still searching for targets. Abe's personal account, recorded during post-war interrogations, reveals the psychological devastation. "We approached in perfect formation, confident in surprise, when suddenly American shells began falling with impossible accuracy. They were firing at targets they could not possibly see, yet their aim was precise. It was like fighting supernatural forces." We realized that night that we were not fighting the American Navy we had studied and prepared for. We were fighting something entirely different, an enemy that could see through darkness, detect us through weather, and coordinate attacks across distances we thought impossible. For the first time, I understood that we might lose this war not through lack of courage, but through lack of technology. Admiral Hiroaki Abe, post-war interview. The human drama was devastating. Japanese sailors trained for night combat superiority found themselves illuminated by searchlights guided by radar, targeted by guns directed by electronic fire control, attacked by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. News of the American radar advantage spread through the Japanese fleet like wildfire, creating a cascade of fear and technological panic that reached the highest levels of naval command. Admiral Gunichi Mikawa, commander of the 8th Fleet, received reports from multiple ship captains describing identical experiences. American forces engaging Japanese ships with devastating accuracy at ranges and in conditions where visual contact was impossible. The cascade was unstoppable. Commander Toshikazu Omai, operations officer for the combined fleet, documented the spreading realization in his war diary. Ship after ship reports the same phenomenon. American forces detecting and engaging our vessels under conditions where detection should be impossible. Our night fighting advantage has been neutralized by American electronic warfare. Radio intercepts revealed the psychological impact on Japanese crews. One decoded message from a Japanese destroyer captain read, "Request immediate withdrawal. Enemy engaging with precision fire despite zero visibility. Casualties mounting. Cannot locate targets. American weapons guided by unknown technology." Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto himself began receiving briefings that fundamentally altered his strategic thinking. Staff reports described American radar capability as technologically advanced beyond our intelligence estimates, and recommended immediate tactical revisions to account for American electronic superiority. The psychological transformation was complete. Japanese naval officers who had begun the war confident in their technological adequacy now faced an enemy whose capabilities they couldn't understand, couldn't match, and couldn't counter. By early 1943, Japanese naval doctrine was undergoing desperate revisions as commanders grappled with American radar superiority that had fundamentally altered the mathematics of naval warfare. The Japanese Naval General Staff issued new tactical guidelines acknowledging American electronic warfare advantages. Enemy radar capability exceeds previous estimates. Night operations no longer provide concealment advantage. Daylight engagements minimize American technological superiority, but increase vulnerability to air attack. It was a no-win situation created by technology. Here's what they tried next. Japanese engineers launched desperate efforts to close the radar gap. They studied captured American equipment, interviewed prisoners, and attempted to reverse engineer American radar technology. But they discovered something more demoralizing than the technology gap itself, the industrial gap. a Japanese technical report from March 1943 concluded, American radar superiority stems not only from advanced design, but from manufacturing precision we cannot achieve with current industrial capabilities. Components require tolerances and materials unavailable in sufficient quantities. Japanese attempts at radar countermeasures proved equally futile. Aluminum chaff designed to confuse American radar was effective for weeks before American systems adapted. Electronic jamming attempts were quickly countered by American frequency changes and signal processing improvements. The strategic reality was inescapable. Japan was fighting a technological war against an enemy whose industrial base could out-innovate, out-produce, and out-deploy them at every level. American radar wasn't just better, it was improving faster than Japanese engineers could understand it. The moment of complete acceptance came in October 1944, when Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, father of the kamikaze strategy, made a statement that captured the full scope of Japanese technological defeat. We can no longer compete with American technology through conventional means. Our electronics, our radar, our industrial capacity, all are inadequate against an enemy whose technological advancement exceeds our ability to comprehend. Captain Atsushi Oi, a staff officer who had studied American radar capability throughout the war, wrote in his final report, American radar technology represented not just technological superiority, but a fundamental difference in industrial philosophy. They treat advanced electronics as mass-producible commodities, while we struggle to build individual units. The final realization was devastating. Japanese naval officers who had dismissed American radar as useless propaganda in 1941 were by 1944 describing it as technological wizardry that we cannot match. The psychological journey from confidence to technological terror took less than 3 years. We began this war believing that American technology was soft, unreliable, and inferior to Japanese craftsmanship. We discovered that American factories could mass-produce electronic miracles faster than our finest engineers could build prototypes. This was not a war we lost through lack of courage, it was a war we lost through lack of understanding. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki, final diary entry. The human cost of this technological gap was measured not just in ships sunk or battles lost, but in the complete psychological transformation of an officer corps that had entered the war, confident in their technological adequacy, and ended it awed by their enemy's electronic superiority. Japanese radar operators, initially trained to dismiss American electronic warfare as propaganda, spent the final months of the war trying desperately to understand technology they could detect but couldn't counter, couldn't match, and couldn't escape. In post-war interviews, Japanese naval officers consistently identified American radar superiority as the technological turning point that made their defeat inevitable. Admiral Somu Toyoda, final commander of the combined fleet, stated, "We underestimated not just American radar capability, but American industrial capacity to deploy electronic warfare on a scale we had not imagined possible." Final war statistics. The electronic gap. American radar-equipped ships by 1945, 16,000 laser Japanese radar-equipped ships by 1945, 400 American radar detection range, 150 plus miles, Japanese radar detection range, 25 miles, American radar-guided weapons, 85% of fleet, Japanese radar-guided weapons, 12% of fleet. The universal truth revealed by this technological mismatch extends far beyond World War II naval warfare. Industrial conflicts are won not by individual courage or tactical brilliance, but by the ability to mass-produce advanced technology faster than enemies can understand or counter it. The lesson that echoes through history. Modern military analysts studying the Pacific War consistently identify the radar gap as a paradigm for technological warfare. Superior industrial capacity creating technological advantages that compound exponentially over time. American factories didn't just build better radar, they built it faster, cheaper, and in quantities that overwhelmed Japanese ability to respond. Today's military planners study the Japanese radar experience as a cautionary tale about underestimating enemy technological capabilities and overestimating the ability to close technological gaps through determination alone. The electromagnetic spectrum became a battlefield where Japanese courage proved irrelevant against American industrial physics. The Japanese sailors who dismissed American radar as useless in 1941 had learned by 1945 that they weren't fighting a war. They were witnessing the birth of electronic warfare, and they were on the wrong side of the technological revolution that would define all future conflicts. In the end, American radar didn't just detect Japanese fleets from impossible distances, it detected the future of warfare itself, a future where industrial capacity and technological innovation would matter more than traditional military virtues. The Japanese learned this lesson in the most devastating way possible, by losing a war to an enemy whose capabilities they had fatally underestimated.